Welcome, brave souls, to a land where fire meets ice, where kings are forged not just by crown and steel, but by destiny itself. Tonight, I invite you to journey into the frozen heart of Iceland, a kingdom built on ancient legends and guarded by the spirit of storms. This is not just a tale of battles and thrones. It is a story of a king whose blood holds the power of fire and frost, a ruler who must face a force so ancient and fierce that it could shatter his world. Stay with me, for within the next hour, you will witness betrayal, magic, and a battle that will decide the fate of an entire kingdom. This is the legend of the King of Iceland. The King of Iceland, a tale of fire and frost. The winds howled over the icy mountains of Iceland, carrying whispers of ancient legends. In the heart of the frozen kingdom stood the towering castle of Elderheim, its black stone walls glowing faintly under the pale light of the northern skies. It was said that the castle itself was forged from the ashes of a dragon slain by the ancestors of King Arvandur, the ruler of this land. King Arvandur was not like any other ruler. He was a man forged by storms and shadows, a leader whose bloodline was intertwined with both human and elemental spirits. His eyes, a piercing silver like frozen lightning, carried the weight of centuries of history, of victories and betrayals. The kingdom of Iceland, though breathtaking in its beauty of glaciers and molten volcanoes, was at the edge of peril. Strange omens had begun to appear in the skies. Black ravens circling the castle at dusk, fiery cracks splitting the frozen ground, and a voice that whispered in the wind, speaking of a curse long forgotten. One evening, as the moon rose like a pale ghost, King Arvandur stood at the balcony of Elderheim. His fur-lined cloak whipped in the icy wind. His closest advisor, Lady Sigrun, approached him quietly, her emerald cloak glimmering like northern lights. "My king," she said softly. "The people whisper of the fire giant stirring in the mountains of Elderheim. They say the ancient chains that bound him are breaking. If this is true," Arvandur's voice cut through the air like steel. "If this is true, then fate has given me the battle I was born for. My ancestors once defeated the giant, but his fire still burns beneath the earth. It will be my duty to end his wrath once and for all." Lady Sigrun lowered her gaze. "There are rumors of something darker, my king. A sorceress, one who walks with the shadow of the fire giant. They say she has returned to claim the throne you hold." The king's jaw tightened. "Sorceress or giant, I will not let this kingdom fall. I have sworn an oath to protect our people, even if I must face the fires of the underworld itself." That night, the king summoned his royal council. The great hall of Elderheim was filled with the flicker of torchlight, shadows dancing on the carved walls depicting ancient battles. Warriors, nobles, and mystics gathered, each with a look of concern etched on their faces. "We march at dawn," the king declared. "The mountain trembles, and the fire beneath our land grows restless. If we do nothing, it will consume all of Iceland. I will lead the army myself." There was silence for a moment, then a roar of approval from the hall. Among the council was a young warrior, Kale, whose loyalty to the king was unmatched. He stepped forward, his hand on the hilt of his sword. "My king, if you go to face the fire giant, I will ride by your side. We will not let the dark flames consume our home." But Lady Sigrun's voice trembled with an unspoken warning. "Be careful, my king. There are forces beyond steel and fire that wish to claim you. The sorceress, she knows your true bloodline." The journey to the mountains began under a sky lit by the green glow of the aurora. The army moved like shadows across the frozen plains, their armor glinting under the moonlight. Arvander rode his black stallion, a beast as fierce as the king himself. As they approached Eldraham, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A rumble like the roar of 1,000 dragons echoed from deep within the earth. Flames burst from the cracks in the ice, painting the night in shades of crimson and gold. It was then that the sorceress appeared. From the darkness of the volcano's base, a woman emerged, clad in robes of black and silver, her hair flowing like liquid night. Her eyes burned like twin embers, and her voice was like the hiss of fire against ice. "King of Iceland," she called, her words carrying across the frozen valley. "You dare bring your armies to the land of fire? You dare challenge what has been promised to me?" Arvander dismounted, stepping forward with his sword drawn, its blade forged from star metal. "I do not bow to shadows or fire. Leave this land, sorceress, or face the wrath of the north." The sorceress laughed, a sound both beautiful and terrifying. "You are bold, Arvander, but you do not know the truth. The fire that burns beneath this mountain is not your enemy. It is your birthright. You are the blood of both king and giant. The fire in your veins calls to me." The king's breath caught for a moment. Could it be true? Had his ancestors bound the fire giant because its power ran within them? Lady Sigrun, who had followed close, whispered urgently, "Do not listen to her lies, my king. She weaves truth with poison." But the sorceress was not finished. "Join me, and together we will rule over fire and ice. Refuse me, and the fire giant will awaken, and there will be no kingdom left to save." The final battle erupted beneath the shadow of Eldraham. The fire giant, a being of molten rock and burning flame, broke free from his prison, his form towering like a mountain come alive. The ground cracked, rivers of lava spilling across the frozen plains. Arvander, his silver eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, led his warriors into battle. Steel clashed against the flaming minions of the sorceress. Kale fought by the king's side, his blade cutting through shadows. Lady Sigrun, wielding her ancient runes, called down the power of the northern winds to shield them from the firestorm. The sorceress, standing atop a cliff of obsidian, raised her staff and summoned a torrent of dark magic. "Kneel, Arvander. Embrace your destiny, or die with your kingdom." But the king roared, his voice echoing like thunder. "I am the king of both fire and frost. I am the storm that cannot be broken." With a surge of strength, he plunged his sword, an artifact known as Frostbane, into the heart of the fire giant. The explosion of fire and ice was blinding. The volcano shook, the night sky filled with the light of both destruction and salvation. When the dust settled, the fire giant was gone, its flame sealed once more. The sorceress, wounded and broken, vanished into the shadows with a promise. "This is not the end, Arvander. The fire within you will burn again." The king stood amidst the silence, his army battered but alive. Snow fell gently, as if the land itself sighed in relief. Lady Sigrun approached, her voice soft. "You have saved us, my king." But the truth she spoke, does it haunt you? Arvander looked at the horizon where the fire had been. "I am both man and storm, both ice and fire. But I am king because I choose what I fight for. And I will fight for Iceland until my last breath." The northern lights shimmered above as the king and his people returned to Eldraham, their hearts filled with both pride and the unspoken fear of what might come. Second story: The King of Iceland. The frozen crown. The northern winds howled over the mountains, carrying the scent of frost and the echoes of forgotten voices. Months had passed since King Arvander sealed the fire giant beneath Eldraham, but peace was fragile like thin ice over a raging river. The king, though victorious, carried a new weight on his shoulders. The whisper of the sorceress who had vowed to return in the quiet halls of Elderheim. A strange unease settled. The castle torches flickered even when there was no breeze, and the stars above seemed to vanish earlier each night. Dreams plagued the king, visions of a crown made entirely of ice, glowing with a power older than his kingdom. Every night, he saw the same image, a pale woman standing in the snow, her voice cold as winter itself. One night, as the aurora danced in haunting shades of violet and blue, Arvandur stood alone in the throne room. The carved wolves and dragons that adorned the walls seemed to watch him with unblinking eyes. Lady Sigrun entered quietly, her emerald cloak flowing like moonlit water. "You've been seeing them again," she said softly. The king turned, his silver gaze shadowed with exhaustion. "A woman, pale as snow, calling me to the north. She speaks of a crown, a frozen crown said to hold power beyond imagination. I fear this is not a mere dream. Something is awakening in the glaciers." Lady Sigrun frowned. "The frozen crown is no myth. It was forged by the Ice Queen long before your bloodline took the throne. Whoever wears it commands the very essence of winter, but its power is a curse as much as it is a gift. It is said to demand a price, a life for a life." Before the king could respond, a horn sounded from the castle gates. Kale, the loyal warrior who had fought beside Arvandur against the fire giant, stormed into the hall, his armor dusted with frost. "My king," he panted, "our northern watchtowers have fallen. A storm unlike any we have seen is moving south, swallowing villages whole. It is no ordinary storm. It moves with purpose, as if something is guiding it." Arvandur gripped his sword, frostbane, feeling its cold steel hum in his hand. "Then our enemy is not fire this time, but ice." The journey to the far north began with a company of 50 warriors, their breath misting in the bitter air. The landscape grew harsher with each passing mile, jagged glaciers rising like teeth from the earth. Strange creatures prowled the edges of the icy wilderness, wolves with eyes of blue flame, and shadows that moved even when the moonlight revealed nothing. At the edge of the world stood the glacier of eternity, a wall of ice so tall it seemed to touch the heavens. There, waiting for them, was the woman from the king's dreams. She was more spirit than flesh, her white hair drifting like snow in the wind. Her eyes were crystalline, reflecting both beauty and cruelty. "Arvandur of Elderheim," she said, her voice both soft and commanding. "You seek the frozen crown, but it is not yours to take. You are of fire and storm. This crown belongs to winter alone." The king stepped forward, his silver gaze unwavering. "If this storm is yours, call it back. My people are freezing. I will not let Iceland fall to endless winter." The woman's lips curled into a smile that held no warmth. "You misunderstand. I am not your enemy. The storm is not mine, it is hers." From deep within the glacier, a sound like cracking thunder echoed. The ice split apart, revealing a throne carved from solid frost. Upon it sat the Ice Queen, an ancient being of pure winter magic, her crown of ice glowing with eerie light. The Ice Queen rose, her presence so cold that frost crawled across the armor of the warriors. "The world has burned too long," she said, her voice like the crackle of frozen lakes. "The age of fire is ending. The age of frost begins. You, King of Storms, will bow to me or see your kingdom entombed in eternal snow." Arvandur raised frostbane, the blade glowing faintly with blue light. "I bow to no queen, living or dead. If you bring death to my people, I will bring the storm to yours." The Ice Queen extended her hand, and a wall of ice surged forward, engulfing several warriors. Kale swung his sword, shattering the frozen trap, but the queen's power was relentless. Lady Sigrun began chanting ancient runes, calling forth the northern lights to weaken the queen's grip on the land. "Take the crown," Sigrun shouted to the king. "It is the only way to match her power. But remember, the crown demands a price." Arvander hesitated for only a moment, then charged through the storm. He leapt onto the icy throne, seizing the crown of frost. A surge of freezing energy tore through him, his breath turning into shards of ice. With a roar that shook the heavens, the king slammed Frostbane into the ground. The magic of fire and ice collided, creating an explosion of light that shattered the storm and sent the Ice Queen screaming into the void. When the battle was done, the land fell silent. Snowflakes drifted gently, no longer biting with unnatural cold. Arvander stood, the frozen crown resting heavily in his hands. "My king," Kale said, his voice trembling, "you hold the power of winter itself. What will you do with it?" Arvander looked to the horizon. "I will lock it away where no man can find it. Power like this is not meant for kings or queens. It is meant to sleep." As they returned to Elderheim, the king's heart was heavy with the knowledge that both fire and ice now ran through his blood. And somewhere, far in the distance, the voice of the sorceress whispered once more, "You cannot hide from your destiny, Arvander. Fire and ice will both claim you." The King of Iceland. The war of eternal realms, the wind over Iceland carried an unusual stillness, as though the world itself was holding its breath. It had been many months since King Arvander returned from the northern seas, where he sealed the Shadow King beneath the black waters. Yet, despite the apparent peace, the king could feel it. Something far greater than fire, ice, or shadow was stirring. The skies over Elderheim glowed with unfamiliar colors, bleeding from deep violet to blood red. The aurora no longer danced in joy. It twisted like a warning. In the dead of night, Arvander dreamed of a gate, a towering arch of obsidian and frost, standing in a desert of black sand. Behind that gate, a voice called out to him, deep and commanding, unlike anything he had heard before. "The realms are breaking, son of fire and frost. You are the key, and the key must be broken, or the worlds will fall." The king awoke in a cold sweat, gripping Frostbane by instinct. The sword pulsed faintly, as though alive. Lady Sigrun, who had been watching over him since the battle with the Shadow King, rushed in. "My king, are you dreaming of the gate again?" Arvander looked into her eyes. "How do you know?" "Because the mystics have seen it too. It is the Gate of Realms, a doorway that was sealed eons ago by your ancestors to keep the gods of chaos from entering our world. If the gate opens, no magic, no blade, not even you can stop what comes through." Kale, ever loyal, entered the room with urgency. "Then we must destroy the gate before anyone else can use it. We have to stop whatever calls your name." But Sigrun's voice trembled. "Destroying the gate would mean tearing apart the magic that binds this land. Iceland's balance, fire, ice, and shadow, would collapse. We'd lose everything." The king stood silently for a moment. "Then we find another way. I will not let fate decide for us." The journey to the Gate of Realms began across landscapes untouched by human feet. Arvander, Kale, Lady Sigrun, and a company of elite warriors rode north through the Ashen Plains, where black volcanic glass cut the air with every breeze. Days passed without sunlight. Only the strange red glow of the sky guided them. One night, as they camped near the edge of the frosted fjords, an unnatural mist crept over the camp. From the mist, figures began to emerge, faces they recognized, warriors they had lost in past battles. Kale whispered a voice, soft and broken. It was his brother, who had died years ago in the War of the Fire Giant. But as Kale reached out, the figure dissolved into smoke, revealing its true form, a shadowy creature with glowing white eyes. The attack was swift and brutal. Shadow beasts, remnants of the Shadow King's army, descended on the camp. Kale fought valiantly, his sword cutting through their ghostly forms. Arvander's silver eyes blazed as he called both fire and frost, striking them down with a fury that split the ground beneath him. But even as they won the battle, Lady Sigrun looked to the horizon, her face pale. These shadows, they shouldn't exist. Something is awakening the remnants of the Shadow King. Someone wants to stop us from reaching the gate. After weeks of travel, they reached the Valley of Silence, a place said to be cursed by the gods themselves. No birds sang, no wind blew. It was as though the world was holding its breath. At the valley's center, half buried in black ice, stood the Gate of Realms. It was massive, its surface carved with symbols older than the language of men, but they were not alone. Standing before the gate, as if waiting for them, was her, the sorceress. Her black robes moved like smoke, and her amber eyes burned with power. "Arvander," she said, her voice dripping with dark satisfaction. "You've come, just as I knew you would. The gate calls to you because it knows what you are. Fire, ice, shadow, you are not a king. You are the balance between them, and soon you will be mine." Arvander's hand tightened on Frostbane. "You were behind this. You woke the shadows, didn't you?" The sorceress tilted her head. "I merely answered the gate's call. But you are the key to opening it. Without you, no one can unleash the gods who wait beyond." Kale stepped forward, his blade drawn. "Then you'll never get him. Not while I draw breath." But the sorceress raised her hand, and shadows erupted from the ground, forming an army that surrounded them. "Fight if you must. It will change nothing. The gate will open, and you will kneel." The battle that followed was unlike any the king had fought. Shadows clashed with steel, fire roared against darkness, and frost exploded into crystal shards. Kale cut through dozens of shadow warriors, but the army was endless. Lady Sigrun called upon every rune she knew, weaving the northern lights into shields and blasts of magic. Meanwhile, Arvander faced the sorceress herself. Their duel was a storm of fire and ice, her dark magic colliding with the raw power of Frostbane. "You are strong," she hissed, "but you are incomplete. You cannot control the balance within you. Let me help you harness it." "I need no help from you," the king growled, his blade slicing through her spells like lightning through clouds. "I am king because I choose my path, not because fate demands it." In a final strike, he plunged Frostbane into the ground, channeling both fire and ice into the earth. The shockwave shattered the shadows, sending the sorceress to her knees. But even as she fell, the gate behind them began to tremble. A deep voice rumbled from within, a sound so ancient it made the ground quake. "The key is here. The door will open." Arvander turned to the gate. Its surface cracked, revealing a blinding light. He realized then what Brynja had warned him. Only his sacrifice could close the gate. Sigrun screamed over the roaring wind. "Don't do this. There must be another way." Arvander placed Frostbane into Kale's hands. "Protect them. Protect our people." Before anyone could stop him, the king walked into the gate's light, calling upon every ounce of power within him. Fire and frost collided in his veins, and with a roar that shook the mountains, he sealed the gate from within. When the light faded, the gate was gone. So was Arvander. Kale fell to his knees, clutching the sword. He's gone. But Lady Sigrun looked at the horizon, where the aurora burned brighter than ever. No, she whispered. A king like Arvander never truly dies. He is part of Iceland now, watching, waiting. Fifth story, The King of Iceland. The serpent of the deep, the winds of Iceland carried a strange scent, salt, iron, and blood. The seas had grown restless, waves rising like walls and crashing against the shores with unnatural fury. Fishermen who sailed into the northern waters whispered of something vast moving beneath the surface, something with scales as black as obsidian and eyes like burning gold. In the great hall of Elderheim, King Arvander sat upon his throne, the firelight casting sharp shadows on the walls etched with the history of his bloodline. Frostbane, his legendary blade, rested across his knees. His silver eyes, sharp as winter lightning, were clouded with concern. Lady Sigrun entered, her emerald cloak glinting under the torchlight. "The sea speaks of death, my king," she said, her voice steady but grim. "The ancient serpent has awakened." Arvander's jaw tightened. The Midgard serpent. I thought it was a myth, a tale meant to frighten children. Sigrun shook her head. "No myth, my king. It is older than fire and frost. It slumbers beneath the deepest part of the northern sea, bound by magic older than the world. But something has broken its chains. If it rises, its hunger will swallow not just Iceland, but all the lands beyond." Kale, the warrior who had fought beside Arvander through fire, ice, and shadow, stepped forward. "Then we hunt it before it hunts us. Give me your word, my king, and I will gather the fleet." But Arvander's gaze lingered on the northern horizon, where the sea churned like boiling metal. "This is no ordinary beast, Kale. A serpent that can coil around the world cannot be slain by steel alone. We need something more, something buried in our past." The mystics of Elderheim were summoned to the great hall, their white robes trailing behind them like snow. At their head was Brynja, the ancient seer who had once guided Arvander in the war against the Shadow King. Her face was pale and lined with years of wisdom. "The serpent's awakening is no accident," she said, her voice trembling like brittle ice. "It is drawn to the power you carry, Arvander, the fire in your blood, the ice in your crown. It seeks to devour what makes you king. And if it succeeds, the seas will drown the earth." "Then tell me how to stop it," Arvander demanded. Brynja's eyes glimmered with sadness. "To defeat the serpent, you must claim the heart of the ocean, a gem of pure magic that lies within the ruins of the drowned city, Valthorn. It is guarded by the spirits of those who perished when the seas claimed their home. They will not give it willingly." "Then I will take it by force if I must," the king said. "I will not let this serpent claim my kingdom." The fleet of Elderheim sailed into the northern waters, guided by stars that seemed dimmer than usual. The air grew heavy with mist, and the sea was unnaturally still. Lady Sigrun stood at the bow beside the king, her runes glowing faintly. "Do you feel that?" she asked. "It's as if the ocean is watching us." Before the king could answer, the waters rippled, and a shape rose from the depths. A vast spine, black as night, broke the surface, followed by another and another. Then, with a roar that shattered the silence, the Midgard serpent emerged. Its body stretched beyond the horizon, its scales glistening like wet iron, and its eyes burned with a hunger that defied reason. the fleet erupted into chaos. The serpent's massive coils smashed ships like toys, sending warriors into the freezing waters. Kale leapt onto the nearest coil, his sword striking sparks against the serpent's armor like scales. "Go, my king," he shouted. "Find the heart of the ocean. I'll hold it back." But Arvandur, unwilling to leave his men, drew Frostbane. The blade flared with a brilliant light of fire and frost. "No, Kale. We fight together." The serpent lunged, its jaws wide enough to swallow a ship whole. With a cry that echoed across the waves, Arvandur plunged Frostbane into its eye. The beast shrieked, retreating into the depths for the moment. But the king knew it would return. With the serpent temporarily driven back, the survivors reached the ruins of Valthorn, a city long buried beneath the waves. Its towers, blackened and broken, jutted out of the sea like the ribs of a fallen giant. Inside the sunken palace, the heart of the ocean awaited. It was a crystal the size of a man's chest, glowing with a blue light so pure it seemed to hold the sea itself within it. But as Arvandur reached for it, ghostly figures rose from the water, warriors clad in armor of coral and bone, their hollow eyes filled with rage. "You cannot take what belongs to the deep," they hissed. "The ocean claims all." Arvandur raised his blade, but Sigrun stepped forward, her voice calm. "Spirits of the deep, hear me. We do not come to steal, but to protect. If the serpent awakens fully, even the ocean will not remain." The spirits paused, their hollow eyes flickering. After a tense silence, they bowed their heads. "Then take the heart, king of fire and frost. But know this, its power will demand a price. The ocean does not give without taking." Arvandur gripped the crystal, feeling its power surge through him like a tidal wave. He understood then what it would take to defeat the serpent. He would have to bind his life to the sea itself. The serpent returned, larger and more furious than before, the sea boiling around it. The final battle erupted under the light of a blood-red moon. Ships shattered, men screamed, and the ocean itself seemed to fight against the king's fleet. Arvandur stood at the bow of his flagship, the heart of the ocean glowing in his left hand, Frostbane blazing in his right. "Come, serpent," he roared. "Face the King of Iceland." The serpent lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut. Arvandur leapt, landing on its head, and drove Frostbane deep between its scales. At the same time, he pressed the heart of the ocean against its flesh. A blinding explosion of light erupted, mixing fire, ice, and water into a storm so violent that it shook the heavens. The serpent writhed, its body collapsing into mist and foam as the magic consumed it. When the sea calmed, Arvandur stood at the edge of the broken deck, his body trembling. The heart of the ocean had fused with him, its power now flowing through his veins. He could feel the tide within him, the pulse of the sea itself. Kale, bloodied but alive, approached. "The serpent, is it gone?" "Yes," Arvandur said softly. "But the sea will never be the same, and neither will I. I am part of it now." Lady Sigrun's gaze softened. "Then you have become what no king has ever been. Fire, frost, and ocean, all bound in one heart. Iceland is safe, but for how long?" Arvandur looked out at the endless horizon, the aurora glowing above. "As long as I breathe, no serpent, no shadow, no force will take this land. I swear it." Sixth story: The King of Iceland. The war of the gods. The winds that swept across Iceland carried whispers of something ancient, something no mortal dared to name. King Arvandur, ruler of fire and frost, had faced giants, shadows, and serpents, yet he sensed a storm unlike any before. This was not a storm of earth or sea. It was a storm of the heavens. For weeks, strange signs filled the skies. The aurora borealis glowed crimson instead of green, streaking across the heavens like rivers of blood. The moon cracked into a crescent shape, as if something had bitten into it. The mystics of Elderheim whispered that the gods of the old world, the very beings who shaped the land of Iceland, were stirring from their eternal slumber in the great hall of Elderheim. King Arvandur stood with his sword Frostbane resting on the arm of his throne. Lady Sigrun entered, her emerald cloak trailing behind her. She looked pale, her voice strained. "My king," she said, "the signs are no longer omens. The gods are awakening." Kale, his most loyal warrior, stood at her side. "The people are afraid. Villages along the northern cliffs report seeing golden fire fall from the sky. Some believe it is a blessing. Others think it is a warning." Arvandur's silver eyes burned with a quiet intensity. "If the gods walk this earth again, they will find Iceland unbowed. I do not kneel, not to giants, not to shadows, and not to gods. The first god descended on the third night, a figure of blinding light, armored in gold and crowned with a halo of fire. It was Tyrandur, the god of war, whose voice shook the mountains. Arvandur of Iceland, the god boomed. Your blood carries fire and frost, stolen from realms that do not belong to you. The balance of the world has been broken by your hand. We have come to claim what is ours." The king stepped forward, Frostbane glowing faintly in his grip. "I am no thief. My power was won in battle, earned through blood and sacrifice. I protect my people, as a true king must." The god's eyes blazed. "Then prove it. In 7 days' time, the gates of the gods will open on Mount Skjaldur. Face us there, mortal king, or we will burn your kingdom to ash." Before Arvandur could respond, the god vanished in a burst of golden fire, leaving the hall trembling. The journey to Mount Skjaldur was unlike any Arvandur had taken before. This was no mere battlefield. It was the sacred ground where, according to legend, the gods first touched the earth. As the king and his companions traveled, the world around them grew strange. Rivers flowed with molten silver. The wind carried whispers of forgotten songs that on the fourth night, they encountered a woman dressed in black feathers, her eyes like twin moons. She was a Valkyrie, a messenger of the gods. "You should not go to Skjaldur, Arvandur," she said. "You are mortal. They will crush you." The king's voice was steady. "I have faced shadows darker than death and flames hotter than the sun. If the gods wish to test me, then let them." The Valkyrie smiled, but there was sorrow in her eyes. "You are brave, king, but bravery is not enough to survive the judgment of the divine." When they reached Mount Skjaldur, the sky split open. From the rift descended not one but 3 gods: Tyrandur, god of war; Vera, goddess of storms; and Solvith, god of death. Each radiated power so immense that even Kale, fearless as he was, felt his knees weaken. Tyrandur spoke first. "Your time is over, mortal. The age of men ends tonight." But Arvandur raised Frostbane, its edge shining with both fire and ice. "The age of men will end only when we choose, not when you decree it." With a roar, Tyrandur struck. His blade of golden flame clashed with Frostbane, sending sparks that lit the sky. Vera called storms so fierce they split the ground, while Solvith summoned shadows to swallow the king whole. Yet Arvandur did not falter. With Sigrun's runes protecting him and Kale at his side, he fought like the storm itself. Relentless, untamed, the battle raged for hours. The gods, though mighty, were surprised by the strength of the mortal king who carried the power of fire and frost within him. "You are no ordinary man," Vera hissed, her storm-gray hair whipping around her face. "What are you?" Arvander's voice thundered. "I am the King of Iceland. I am the son of storms and the heir of fire. I am the shield between my people and the end of the world." In a final desperate strike, he drove Frostbane into the ground, summoning a wave of fire and ice so great it shook Mount Skjaldur. The gods were forced back, their forms fading into mist. Tyrander's voice echoed through the storm. "You have won this battle, King, but our judgment is not over. The gods will return." When silence fell, Arvander stood alone on the mountaintop, his cloak torn and his body bleeding. Kale and Sigrun reached him, their faces filled with awe and fear. "You fought the gods and lived," Kale said, almost in disbelief. Arvander gazed at the horizon, where the aurora glowed brighter than ever. "I lived, but at what cost? Each battle takes something from me. One day, I fear, there will be nothing left to give." Sigrun touched his arm gently. "You are more than a king now. You are the bridge between mortal and divine. That is why they fear you." Arvander said nothing. He simply looked to the heavens, knowing this was only the beginning.